Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Ted Ritter. I'm with LMI 360. I'm filling in right now for the technical hosts because we're having a little bit of a technical issue connecting our moderator. Not to worry, we will get started in just a minute or two. Joe, would you like to say good afternoon to everyone?
Yes, welcome everybody. We're absolutely thrilled to have everybody online. We're excited about the topic and the panel and the ensuing discussion, but I'd maybe take this opportunity to really thank all the folks in the Denver marketplace and everybody else who's on, of course. But this is a Denver's chapters hosting meeting. This is our second meeting. We started in February, and we've just had wonderful conversations, wonderful feedback, and we're really looking forward to working with everybody to help grow the BD Guild in Denver and in Colorado. So I believe we have maybe over 60 registrations from 5 different states. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, from the folks in Colorado and elsewhere, and Phoenix and California and Tennessee, I believe, and Missouri. So thank you very much. And I want to say Minnesota, my home state. I think we have somebody from Minnesota as well.
So who from Minnesota? I think that's a first. Who from Minnesota?
Yeah, it's a first. I don't want to call them out in case they're not here. I just wanted to, let me just say, I think my old boss from a company that he was my boss for 23 years, Brian Leash, up in Minnesota. I want to say I saw his name, so. But yeah. We'll just give everybody just another minute here. We're trying to get Danielle on the horn.
I am on.
Danielle, welcome.
Hello.
Hi there.
All right. Well, with that, I think we can get going, right? Why don't we get started? Danielle, the only thing we missed. Yeah, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, Ted.
No. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, okay. Danielle was just mentioning thanking everybody from the Denver chapter for hosting and our panel. We will get started. My name is Joe McGovern. I am a founder of the Business Development Guild. And a little bit about my background. I come from 30 years in the professional services space on the environmental consulting and engineering side, pretty much in the business development capacity. However, I did have management and operation experience as well. I was a principal of a company. Now I have my own company called the McGovern Group, and we provide environmental and building environmental due diligence. So that's a quick thing about me. The Business Development Guild, we believe, has a simple, yet dare we say, oh so important mission. And that is to be the premier source of education, coaching, and support for the business development profession. We'll get into a little bit more about that in a second. Quick note, and thank you for our sponsors, LMI 360, Ted Ritter, thank you, and Alex Dugan. LMI 360 is here in Phoenix. Ted is on our advisory board here in Phoenix as well. They are a sales and marketing agency. Small Giants, a particular thank you to obviously Danielle Ferraletto, who will be leading the discussion later, and Kimberly Werner, who's leading the BD Guild charge on the ground in Denver. Also a marketing agency. So thank you, Small Giants, and that other company called McGovern Group. Okay, real quick about what we're trying to achieve here. When we talk about the first point there, to bridge the gap between business development and operations. When we first started this a few years ago, a number of us got together and said, okay, when business development doesn't work within an organization, either the professional or the overall effort, is there a common denominator and what is that? And just based on our observations, we came to the conclusion that you know what, it really is when BD and the internal BD and the operational teams are not aligned. They may not necessarily be understanding each other's roles clearly. They may not be communicating, for whatever reason, they're not necessarily aligned. And that puts the business development, not only the business development person's position in a vulnerable state, it doesn't make the effort to provide good chance for success. So, but when they are aligned, really good things happen. So we kind of set out to say, hey, why don't we set out to build that bridge between business development and operations on the internal side, operational side, basically to help teams become better aligned. So we do that through collaboration and education, the business development and operations personnel on the definition, process, and teamwork that goes into it. And that would result in maximizing the return on the business development investment. And that's basically what we're trying to do. And you know what, overall, advance the profession. Really kind of call it let's say, hey, listen, this is a profession, elevate the profession, and be a voice for it as well.
Hey, Joe, do we want to do a survey?
Yes. And do we have Alex on board?
Yes, we do.
All right. Yes.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Alex. So thank you. I know we're scrambling a little bit here, but yeah, no, absolutely. And Alex, why don't you just kind of set it up of what we're going to be doing with the polls for the program and our first one. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, timely, given that we're all working remotely with a few technical challenges, as you heard earlier. So we want to know how you all are managing to stay connected with each other, with your customers, with your prospects. So we'd love to hear from you if you want to take a quick minute and answer, how are you best staying in touch with people? Looks like a lot of virtual meetings. We'll give everyone just another minute. Great. If the poll doesn't close automatically, there will be a small box with a blue X that you can X out, but appreciate the feedback. Thank you so much. And Joe, I will turn it back over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Alex. Yes, and to the BD Guild, we are a membership organization. We believe that it's a great value proposition. So again, with the intent and goal of having teams become better aligned and maximize the return. So you get discounts on meetings and trainings and events, and we do have members-only events throughout the year as well. Our membership model, you'll see there that we receive a 1+1 meeting registration. So how it's basically set up is once one becomes a member, there's a dedicated member, typically the business development professional, but doesn't need to be. But there's a floating membership, if you want to call it that, within an organization. Because what we found is that different members from an operational team would want to come to different meetings depending on the topic, the panel, the presenters, what have you. So that membership is available to a number of the operational side. Because our whole goal is really to develop a nice mix between the business development professionals, but also the operational folks when we do have these events. Really, our goal is to have a 50-50 split because it's such a team effort. You can sign up online, businessdevelopmentguild.com, and also renew. But in the meantime, if there are any questions on that, obviously, we would love to have a conversation, love to learn more about your business, and answer any questions that you have. Number of opportunities to get involved. I am based in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's where we started. We also have a group in Southern California, and Southern California being Los Angeles and Orange County, and obviously Denver, which we're really excited about. Like I mentioned, we have folks from different states. We think that if fills a need in Southern Cal, Denver, and Phoenix, there might fill a need in other markets as well. So if there's any other folks in other markets that might want to inquire about starting a new chapter, we are all ears and we'd love to have a conversation. Oh, and each one of these chapters will have the different opportunities. We'll have different committees, different opportunities to come up with topic ideas. If you know folks who would want to be panelists or presenters, really kind of have an opportunity to kind of put your voice to it. All right, something that we're very proud of and we think is a unique offering in the marketplace is something that we have developed over the last few years, and that's a Certified Business Developer certification. Started that in Phoenix in 2017, so we've had 3 graduating classes. And I'll give you a little bit of a snapshot of what that is. It's a comprehensive view of what we believe makes up not only the business development profession, but the knowledge base of a business development professional. So there's 12 different classes that are held over the course of 6 months. So traditionally, for the first 3 years in Phoenix, we started in May and have one afternoon a month for 6 months. So 1 month equals one module, 2 classes per module. The agenda for the Phoenix curriculum can be found on businessdevelopmentguild.com on the website. We say stay tuned for the class. We say traditionally starting in May just because this virus thing has really kind of put a wrench into our schedule in terms of when we're going to schedule our live classes. But we will. We're paying very close attention to that. This year, with a little bit of luck, again with the virus schedule, we are going to be delivering the live classes in Southern California as well. And obviously, we are looking to bring that to the Denver, Colorado marketplace in addition. And we are also in the initial development stages of it making an online offering as well. So something that we're very excited about. We'd love to talk to you about it and answer any questions. And again, the agenda can be found on the curriculum. The curriculum can be found on our website.
I think we've got one
before
more
we get into, yep, absolutely,
Yep.
Alex. We have one more poll question, and then with that, after that, we'll kind of get into our program.
Yeah.
Alex.
Thanks, Joe. Boy, there's a lot going on with the Guild. So on your screen, you're going to see one more poll. We would love to hear from you a little bit more about where you're at. Do you have a strategic plan? Do you have a BD plan? Are you implementing your BD plan if you have one? If you would take a minute to just quick share your feedback, we would love to hear from you. Thank you. Great to see so many of you have your plans in place and are implementing them. Last chance to enter. Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your feedback. Joe, back over to you.
All right, Alex, thanks. And before I turn it over, I know that we'd love to have interaction even in this virtual capacity that we have. So there's an opportunity to put some questions online, and Danielle, as Danielle moves along, she'll take a look at the questions and see if we can integrate that into the discussion. One quick note about the topic, integrating your business development plan with your strategic plan. Danielle, we appreciate you bringing this topic to the fore. You know, a number of us have been, I don't want to say inundated with the new thing, with this whole COVID situation, because it's serious, and what to do during a lockdown and how to be effective and all that, and that's important. But at the same time, there's certain fundamentals that I think we can also communicate and share and incorporate adjustments on the ground that we need to make. So that's why we're excited about this topic and this panel. So with that, let me do a quick intro for Danielle. Danielle, I want to say that we've known each other for probably 20-some years. Always admired what you've done when you were with previous companies, and in particular what you've done and how you've grown Small Giants. Danielle has been was an instructor for last year's Certified Business Developer class on budgeting and operations, which is wonderfully put together. And so with that, and after that, we just, based on a lunch, I believe, we were having a conversation, and the question was, what do we want to do with the BD Guild and kind of its vision? And the question was, what about Denver? Well, lo and behold, a few months later, here we are having our second meeting and chapter developing. So very much appreciate to Danielle and the Small Giants team and Kimberly as well. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Danielle? Danielle, go for it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to see that we have about 50 people participating in this call. And the topic, I believe, is so timely. The irony is that we did not plan it around the COVID event. We actually had our inaugural meeting in Denver at DLR Group in February, and we had such a nice turnout. And I thought it was so fun that people said, what is this group even about? Because they had very little information and they still felt like it would be valuable. And now with more people knowing what's going on and Kimberly leading as the steering committee member there, she's brought so many great people on board already. And just one reflection of that is this great panel that we have today. So I'm really excited to dive right into the content to really frame the conversation today. The conversation really lies within strategic planning and as leaders in our profession, how this panel integrates the business development plan and is accountable for business development results through integrating strategic plan within their firm to their business development efforts and plans. So the first slide is really to better understand what a strategic plan is. There are many different variations, and I love it when I see firms customize them to fit their needs best. But in any strategic plan, there are some things that you always incorporate. So there are some known components that are kind of commonly accepted in any strategic plan. So I'm going to walk you through those on this slide just quickly. First of all, if you don't already have a mission, a vision, and core values, that's something that you would want to focus on making sure that your company is aligned on, because that becomes your foundation. And those are things that really should not change. Can they ever change? Yes, they can. But the reason you exist as a firm is your mission or your purpose statement, and that should anchor so many decisions that you make as a firm. Strategic planning is a 3 to 5 year plan for your company. So one step further up the chain from that is your mission and core values. What do you stand for as a firm? That's really your why as a firm. And your core values are how you play that out. The next thing I really like having in a strategic plan is a summary of your current situation. So none of us are going to forget 2020 first quarter, but 10 years from now, we might forget if it was 2019, if it was 2021, if it was the whole year, if it was just a quarter, whatever that might be. And so having just a quick summary, I always like just a couple of paragraphs that's a narrative of what is going on point in time in your company, because 3 to 5 year plan, when we're busy and we kind of lose sight of it and people come on that are new, they might not really understand why there's a certain emphasis on things. The next area then is a summary of what you're trying to accomplish. Why are you even planning to plan? And as strange as that seems, many firms don't spend a lot of time to think about what they want to get out of a strategic plan. And what I see as evidence of this is that some strategic plans are very heavily focused on just business development. Other strategic plans, and actually just about a month ago, I met with a client and he said, I don't need a strategic plan. I have one right here. And he showed me a really nice business plan when he started the company 2 years ago. That is very different. So having a summary of what you're trying to achieve in your strategic plan keeps your team that's working on it aligned. So this is about consensus and clarity, and then a plan to communicate it. I actually call it the 4 C's, so that you are anchoring your decisions in a plan that everyone understands. So then the next areas, just quickly, are SWOT. I believe as business development professionals, we all understand what that is. It's internal strengths and weaknesses, and then any forces externally that can provide opportunities or threats. And those are a really big component of understanding where you're going. The market sectors that you currently serve, and then any of the services that you provide, and if there has been expansion in that area. And then finally, we get into another measurement, which is company baseline. And that's always just really good to reflect back on the last 3 to 5 years and understand what you need to measure. So, of course, revenue is there. Usually profitability is there. Sometimes we measure the number of projects depending on your company. But I really like seeing well-rounded baseline. Again, we're talking about a strategic plan. So if one of our goals in the plan is employee retention, then it would be about retaining the employees, and maybe you have a metric of your employee retention rate and trying to improve that. Another goal might be your client retention rate or your client satisfaction rate. Then we move into competitive analysis, and with all of that information, now we can set goals and tactics and derive activities against this plan, building a budget that everyone can adhere to and everyone is marching in the same direction. Now we go into the next segment. So now we have our strategic plan. That's our 3 to 5 year plan corporately. As business development professionals, this is the plan that we now grab the ball and run with. This is our 1 year snapshot for business development in light of that strategic plan. So in our strategic plan, we talked about the market sectors we serve. In our business development plan, we're going to memorialize the markets that we serve, do some deeper diving, right, into the ones that have been most effective, the ones that might be a lot of work for maybe not the most, maybe not the greatest margins. We are going to then look into potential desired markets where we think, in light of all of our strengths and weaknesses in our strategic plan that we identified, that we can get into desired markets and services. So this is growth. This is where, as business development people, we can start to ferret out new opportunities. From the competitive analysis that we did in our strategic plan, we now roll into a deeper competitive analysis. So instead of just mentioning them by name, because we're all familiar with our competitors, as business development professionals, we're taking that ball and we're understanding through what attributes and what activities and what reputations are these companies differentiating themselves, and how can we remain competitive? We're looking at our top clients and our top trade partners, like partnering maybe brokerage firms, development companies, maybe financial institutions, architectural groups, engineering and consulting groups. And then, of course, we're going to have our top prospects. Not to say this doesn't live in a CRM software, but we will memorialize it and we all agree upon this. So this business development plan is an offshoot of the strategic plan. Now we look into the associations that we're going to get involved in now that we've identified the markets that we're in and the desired markets that we want to be in. And once again, what do? We put together some simple goals for the next year that we can achieve, who's going to do it, by when, and then we have activities. If you have a bit of a business development team, then you are going to have maybe a business development coordinator who has activities that are different than you as the vice president of business development. Perhaps you have market segments that you divide up, and so these will be activities that are assigned. And probably the most important part of both of these plans, as I wrap up my thoughts and anchor this conversation, is that we have to have accountability and a regular cadence of meeting to make sure this plan is moving forward. So if everyone is in general agreement that that would be a good way to move forward with a plan, I'd like to go ahead and open it up to the panelists. Joe, did you want to summarize the panelists, or would you like me to introduce them?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You know what? Why don't we have a slide for each one. Why don't we have each person give just a quick overview by themselves, kind of introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of move into the questions. Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect.
All right. And Kristen, you are up.
Hi. Thank you for having me. This is Kristen Hodel. I'm Director of Business Development and Marketing at Wember. We're an owner's representative firm in Denver. I'm responsible for implementing the strategic plan, which identifies the prospects that we're targeting for the year, closing new work, and strengthening AEC industry relationships. Before joining Wember full-time about a year ago, I consulted with them and other clients in the AEC industry, assisting with marketing and business development strategies. I also have experience from the healthcare industry and economic development for the state of Colorado. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good afternoon, and again, thank you for having me on the panel. This is Scott Farrell, president of I2 Construction. I guess I really haven't moved that much around in my career. I was kind of born into construction with a family business in Wisconsin, and now I've been in Colorado for a little over 20 years, and just over in I2 just completed our 21st year. So a lot of growth and development of a lot of different plans over that time. And looking forward to this conversation. I think it's a critical tie that often isn't made until too late. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brad Schmall, Executive Vice President with JHL Constructors. And as Executive Vice President, I'm responsible for the obviously some strategic planning as it relates to suitability of markets for us, but I also manage the overall business development and marketing departments for JHL. So, and I've been a lifer with JHL. It's hard to believe it's almost 20 years now, but as a Colorado native, I love that we are a Colorado-based, Colorado-focused general contractor. We're an employee-owned firm, about 150 employees strong. And with that workforce last year, size-wise, we're doing about $200 million in annual revenue. We focus on a diverse mix of vertical markets, including K-12, higher ed, municipal, multifamily, and then also some civil and infrastructure work and federal work. And on this topic, I think all of us always have room to improve on kind of that integration between the business development and the operations folks. So while I'm excited to share some perspective, I'm also excited to learn quite a bit from the discussion and from the questions that come up. So thanks again for having me.
Hi.
I am one of the founders of the company, and we are now into our 19th year of business. We're here in Colorado, Wyoming, and Texas. We employ over 600 people, and we're pretty diverse in the verticals that we go after: government and private work, offices, K through 12, higher education, mission critical, medical, water, infrastructure, oil and gas, hospitality. So we're pretty blessed to touch a lot of different types of clients and have our pulse on the market. We track at any time over probably 1,000 different opportunities feeding into our 4 different business units: large construction, industrial, special projects, and service.
All right. Well, with that, let's just dive right in. I will start with Brad. Brad, you, in our conversation earlier, you expressed, dare I say, a bit of shock when you heard that some companies' strategic and business development plans are not closely tied together, if not dovetailed. You mentioned the key is that it is not a one-sided conversation with leadership simply dictating down a plan. Can you share your thoughts on that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the topic's super important. I mean, the question's always asked, how do you get buy-in on the plan, right? And the easy answer is, well, you've got to communicate it effectively, and that seems easy enough, but all too often, we forget that probably the most important part of that the communication of whatever plan you're trying to get out there is the listening part, right? So, I mean, looking at the financial portion of any strategic or annual business plan, you can pretty easily set your revenue goals as a business, as an overall organization, and inherently by setting those revenue goals, you're setting your sales goals, right, based on what you currently have in your backlog. But if you don't have that conversation and you don't get the feedback from the front lines of your organization in all areas, right, on the business development side, operations, pre-con, all of those, then it's a question of how do you validate that your strategic plan is even going in the right direction, right? And so that has to start with pretty open and constant communication about the landscape of the marketplace. And I would say there's two very important sides to that. I think from the leadership perspective, those leaders, they need to ask the right questions, and then they need to listen to their people. Whereas conversely, those frontline folks, the ones that are client and market facing the most, they also have a responsibility to be vocal and share what they're seeing out in the market. I mean, because you can't really put this strategic nor an annual business plan together in a silo and then come out and say, hey, I've got all these great ideas. Here's what we're going to go do, without getting that feedback. And so I really do think those need to be very, very tightly dovetailed, because I know, from our perspective, whether we're in our strategic planning session that goes 3 to 5 years, or we're doing our annual business plan, we can't really discuss any one individual topic without going through the various aspects of various business units of our organization and say, hey, what does this mean to you, finance? What's it mean to you, operations? And pre-con, how are you dealing with this? And then how do we feed the machine on the business development side? So it's really it really needs to be dovetailed quite tightly.
Agree with that, that's for sure. Kristen, you mentioned that you've seen the disconnect in integrated strategic and business development plans also. And you also said that one of the things that attracted you to Wimber was how integrated those two are. Something that you mentioned was a kind of a wish list approach. And I was wondering if you could define what that is exactly, and what you can look out for as a company to identify early if you're falling into that trap.
Yes, thank you. The wish list concept, I think it's prevalent. I think it can be managed and mitigated. Like you said, I was attracted to the Wimber business model. It's a smaller firm, 13 people, been around for 16 years. And what I found was the amount of conversation, again, speaking to what Brad just talked about, the communication that was happening between the president and all of the project managers, everyone involved, it was leading to a lot of accurate decision-making on what was realistic for being accomplished by the staff. In some of my other experience, what can happen is there's a lot of creative people, there's a lot of great ideas, there's a lot of opinions that people hold true on what will return the best investment, where marketing and BD people should be focused. But the piece where it starts to fall apart and it becomes more of a wish list than a practical plan is when you're not tying it back to operations in terms of staff resources. So I think one of the most important things to do to manage this situation and make it a realistic marketing plan, business development plan, it's imperative for every marketing and business development person to keep track of the time and the money that goes into each activity. So dialing it down from we're going to focus on healthcare, higher education, K-12, and civic. Then from there, we identify the particular activities, whether it's trade shows, producing ads, calling on prospective clients, and based off of tracking time that it takes to do each of those over a number of, even just a year, start at a year, you can take those hours and associate it with tasks, and then start with, say, your 2 full-time employee hours at 4,160 hours per year, and start subtracting out. And that's what can alleviate the wish list phenomenon. You start seeing, okay, we know that we do approximately 40 proposals a year and it's going to take up this much time. Now how many hours do we have left and what's most important? So I think that having data and science behind the plan can help bring a reality to what needs to surface and rise to the top as the critical tasks at hand to match those goals that have been set by the strategic plan.
Very good. Very good. So, Scott, you, as you know, that there's a matter of planning, managing, and then also doing and timing. I know that I2 has grown significantly, and much of that has been from running and gunning and doing whatever you needed to and all that you could. With that growth came a time to plan for the horizon. So at what point did it become evident that you needed a more formal planning process, and how was that communicated throughout the company?
Oh, I wish I could recall an exact point that it became evident. I think being an operations guy, I think you kind of have to be hit in the face with it a couple of times, and then you have to have the support to really pause and think about it. You start to lay out, you're not just responding to the next phone call, you're starting to lay out that 3, 5, even 10-year goal, how you diversify. I think you laid it out really well earlier in one of the earlier slides with just the strategic plan. It's not just about putting a plan together. It's about going through that entire analysis, the SWOT internally, externally. What markets are you in? What markets do you want to get in? And even more so, what things are you doing now that just aren't your core competency that you shouldn't be doing now? So I think as those conversations evolve, for us, it's probably been about 10 years. So it took us almost 10 years to truly see it and embrace it and know that we had to add support to the company in that. And then as we continue to grow, I think that support continues to grow with us.
Great, thank you. Carla, something near and dear to business development professionals is the feeling of just assigning a sales number basically in a vacuum to us. And you had mentioned the importance of really connecting the dots to activities that drive and add the most value in a company and lead to revenue generation. Could you expand a little bit on that and share with us how Whitefield does that?
Sure. I think that many companies have some type of strategic planning, no matter your size, large or small, and that many times out of that comes a number for sales that goes to business development and a number for revenue that goes to operations. And then it's kind of like, Godspeed, slice it and dice it and figure it out, and everybody runs and executes. We've looked at an approach where we kind of go kind of top down and bottom up. And so we have all of our business units in our strategic planning. We follow the EOS model, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is off of best practices from the Traction book, and we meet quarterly. And so we're looking at what is the buy-in into our sales and revenue plan. How does that tie into our 10-year plan, our 1,000-day plan, back it into our annual plan? So we're always kind of making sure the decisions we're making today, verticals we're going after, revenue, sales goals, tie in with that long-term strategic plan. And then we start to talk about what support is needed, overhead, margin that we're looking to get out of these different markets. And then we break it up into different department planning. So on the get work side, we kind of break our company up into get work, perform work, and track work. And so our Get Work side of the house is looking at then how does that break up into our client strategy plan. So we have a strategic plan for each target client. How are we spending our activities with that client? What type of projects are we targeting with that client? How are we spending time in things that they enjoy doing, their philanthropies? How do they get together and train as a company? Anything we can do to support that ties back into our marketing activities, into our budgets. We then kind of drive into the sales numbers and operation numbers into what type of staffing do we need for that, because we calculate, we have a hit ratio target out of project pursuits that we have. We want to be effective with the time that we spend and not just price everything. And so all of that kind of ties together, and it comes back up into the organization. So we're really looking at that buy-in, because the more that we have everybody on the same page, talking the same language, then we have a lot of champions going to get this done, not just, hey, a few of us met, this sounds great, you know, go get them, good luck.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, we're also getting questions from the audience, and specifically, Carla, it's been asked of you, how do you keep your pulse on so many industries? What is the size of your team to undertake this effort?
So our Get Work team, we've combined business development, marketing, and pre-construction and estimating. So we have quite a large team, and then they break up amongst different verticals. And so for us, we found a threshold that a pre-construction manager for us is a technical type of a sales individual, client development, and they can touch so many clients, and they kind of have a revenue threshold of how many projects you can manage, how many clients you can manage. So as we grow, if we're going to grow a vertical like industrial, you know, we kind of have certain benchmarks that we're working towards, knowing if we're going to grow, we need to find a person to take on additional clients. Our team has also bought into those numbers, so they welcome when we do add another team member on, that they're helping the department hit the goals. It's not a competitive type of a piece. So for us, we've spent time kind of figuring out where do we spend the best use of individuals' time and linking them to clients. It's tough, though, because as we are looking at all these opportunities, clients, end user clients refer us into other clients, and sometimes we don't quite have the capacity to serve them, right? Because if we're just focusing on target clients, you get referred into another client, you're not quite ready for them. So there's a lot of dynamics in planning that each year.
Very good. Thank you. I have a question for Scott and Brad. I know that both of you are heavily involved in pre-construction and the operational efforts of your firms. And as operational leaders in your company, teamwork is obviously front and center. Can you share with us the importance of engaging and receiving feedback from kind of the front lines, if you will, and how you can use that to ensure that the strategic and business development planning is validated?
Sure, I guess
What do you think, Scott?
I'll start.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think we've already kind of touched on it. I think Carla mentioned it as well. For us, all parts of the organization need to be represented in the strategic plan and development. And to me, that goes not only from laying out the plans, the initiatives, going out 3 to 5 years, but then breaking down the 1 year into not only the 1 year into quarters, into months, and then getting agreement on how you're going to measure them, and challenging every department, and business development is certainly one of those. You know, what are those KPIs and measurements that you're going to use in that world? And I think this ties to another question I saw down there from Adam of what are some of the most common or biggest mistakes with a strategic plan. And to me, if you don't have all parts of the organization represented developing that plan, I think one of the mistakes that I've seen over the years is that you can create different words in different directions within an organization. The management team suddenly starts to alienate themselves from those front lines, if you will, if they don't feel heard or have a voice in developing where the organization is going to go. I don't know if you want to take that in a different direction as well, Brad.
Yeah, I think everything you said is spot on, Scott. I think it's so imperative. I mean, we kind of think of it as a three-legged stool, right? I mean, but between sourcing and going out and winning the work, servicing it in pre-construction, and completing the work in operations, if any one of those legs is off, you've got a pretty uncomfortable stool, and you're risking falling off the doggone thing. So, I mean, we can go win work, but if we don't have the pre-con resources to run it and do so effectively, we could lose our tail on that job in the pre-con, right? And then, I mean, what does it all matter if we can do the job in pre-construction, but we don't have the personnel out in the field on the operations side and project management? And so, I mean, let's face it, to win the work, you have to have the right story to tell, and you need the technical folks on the pre-con and operations side to be the ones that actually bring that work home. In my opinion, our job as business development professionals is to be the setup man for them. And, coming from a baseball background, the setup guy is there to get things set up for the closer to come in and win the game, so to speak. So if you don't have all of those hitting on all cylinders and that open communication coming back, it is very difficult to validate that plan. And to what Carla was speaking to, we're set up very similar in that our business development team is not just a bunch of business development professionals, but it's a weekly touch point with our BD folks, our project executives, and our upper level pre-con folks that all feed the discussion.
Excellent. So, kind of a theme that keeps coming up in this conversation is leadership. And so, from your perspectives, Carla and Scott, what are the operational and business development leaders' responsibilities in this process? How should they be specifically held accountable to each other?
Carla, you want to start us?
Oh, okay. We have taken the approach that we're partners in this. I talk to operations as much as I talk to our Get Work team. So I view that we're kind of linked arms. We meet daily, but we actually have a formal meeting every week to talk about the pursuits we're going after and how that's a good fit for our company. I've seen the tendency where some companies, and we've been guilty of it in the past, that ops is like, just go get the work and we'll figure out how to do it. Just keep the funnel full and we'll figure it out. Well, as we've grown, we really had to change that thinking and really look at what projects fit us best. We have to have the right supervision, right project manager, right experience, because we touch so many different verticals. And so that's been great, because when we have those meetings, if we're saying yes and no to different opportunities, because sometimes they're all coming at the same time, just doesn't work with our manpower planning schedule. We really have to be thoughtful about, some of our projects are 2 years, some of them are a month. And so we leave those meetings very united in what we're saying yes and no to. We have relationships with our clients, like Scott and Brad, that we're able to have that conversation of like, this isn't a great time, we don't have the right team for it, or this is a great time, we have a right team for your project. We have pre-construction resources, operation resources. So I really like that partnership model, because it doesn't become like, oh, business development, you sold this and it turned out to be a lemon. You didn't consult us in it. You didn't fill us in on the details. We all know going into it, the details of the project, how it's rated. We have like an internal rating system for our go, no-go process, and we're all signing off that this is a great fit. We're servicing a client. This is the best choice for the organization.
Yeah, and I guess for us, I think it goes hand in hand with the partnership, but I think the conversation between the BD leader and an operational leader is getting agreement on, the rule of measurement being used, and then it's keeping current on where we are. Our industry is not just linear by any means in our sales and growth. We don't break down perfectly in number of opportunities every week or wins by month. It looks like a heartbeat across all the months at the end of the year. And I think that is also an important blend to keep your finger on that pulse, both in good times, you knock it out of the park for a quarter and, you've sold half of your entire annual sales in a quarter. Well, that's for the leader to recalibrate then with the business development leader and go, great. And what can we now do? And on the flip side of that coin, we also are in environments like we are right now. And opportunities are getting shelved left and right. And our annual sales for the next 30 days, how it breaks down, we know it's not going to hit. And when the proverbial floodgates, however it trickles or opens up from the event we're currently in, however we start to come out of this, all these opportunities are going to be backlog and they will come back eventually. So I think we've got to be understanding and flexible, being agile with our goals as well. Take it when you can get it and understand real world variables we're all dealing with.
One quick note I just wanted to add. Sorry, Danielle, I was just going to say one quick note because you did talk about how do we hold each other accountable. And I know for us on the Get Work side, we're also tied into all the client. We actually do the client closeout surveys at the end of the project. We're tied to the gross margin of that project. So we're always looping back to see, have we delivered a project to operations and included them in all the details to make it successful? What changes do we need to make if it wasn't a successful project? And we kind of incorporate that into our estimating system. So I feel like we are in it for the long run. It's not like we just throw it over the fence to operations. And so that's been a nice piece of accountability.
Good. Yes, and it was mentioned in this current situation, obviously, of COVID, the whole game right now. I was just reading an article before we started this session about the firms that are planning in the short term, creating crisis plans, updating their plans, and using this time proactively are going to win even stronger coming out of this. So that was an encouraging article and so timely. But really what it does is it illustrates adaptability within firms. So my question, I'll start with Kristen. Things like virtual meetings versus in person that we're all so much more accustomed to. How is your organization adapting, and who's leading the charge, and what are some of the changes that you're seeing being implemented in the short term?
Yes, thank you. It's interesting. Wember, as a company, we have not had a home office ever in 16 years. Our project managers often are working from our client sites or on the construction site. And then when we're not out in the field, we work from our home offices. So we weren't hit with the cultural shock quite as much, maybe. But I will say that, of course, it's affected us within, I think it was about 4 days or 5 days after the state of Colorado implemented, might have been the city of Denver, the social distancing rules. We were leading an interview process for general contractors and architects for the city of Castle Pines. And so we were thrown into a position of what are the best practices? Like, we've been doing this virtually, meetings and such, but never interviews. So Paul Wember led the charge on that and did a lot of due diligence on, what kind of setups, what to advise of to the interviewing firms, things like that. So one of the things that came out of that was the writing of 3 advisory blogs that we distributed to the AEC community, and helping provide the perspective of what the owner was seeing during those virtual interviews and all the different elements that need to go into having this different setup, how you're coming across to the owner, how your energy online or on camera is accentuated, what worked, virtual backgrounds or the real deal, lighting. I mean, we've all seen a lot of the tips coming out on social media and the national media as well. But it's to be taken to heart, because the energy that we present on camera, it really comes across so much stronger. So if you have a serious tone, it's going to come off really serious. If you bring that sales energy to the interview in person, to make sure to do it in camera as well. So we've been adapting with our clients in that we are encouraging them to turn on their cameras, because I think we've all noticed, at the end of the day, if you have too many Zoom calls scheduled, it can be really draining. But if you don't have any scheduled with your client, you tend to have this almost a disconnect of the energy after 4 weeks of not seeing each other. So I think part of the importance in this new environment is, even if someone's camera shy, just once in a while, make sure to connect with that face-to-face connection. So again, we're trying to, bring our advisement, giver's gain at this moment. And like you say, it's a time to regroup and reshore up all of your marketing strategy, marketing materials. One thing that's happened for us is our project managers, they were collectively spending, I think we came up with like 40 hours driving to and from project sites. Well, we sat down and said, all right, what's the best use of this time? What these extra hours that we've come up with? And, first and foremost, it was to allow for every single project manager to really refine their game on the projects that are still in play. And then secondly, it was to revisit operational standards that, some of these pet projects, maybe, I spoke about the wish marketing before. This is a chance to catch up on some of that wish marketing, right? So I do believe in that theory that was mentioned, that now is the time to dig in and really just think differently. Like, it was stunning, I know, for all of us, but, we're a civic and education-focused firm. So, overnight I'm thinking, well, all that strategic planning we did in December, it's a little inappropriate right now to be calling on municipalities and seeing if they're really going for bond in November. So what do you do with that time, to use a bit overused term, but still very appropriate? How do you pivot? What can you tweak to alter your revenue source? What do your clients need today that they didn't need yesterday? So I think it's just trying to see everything from a different perspective and utilize the time wisely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect. And actually, on that note, just talking about kind of 2020 hindsight and perspective, opening it up to the whole panel, learning from the successes with your firms, what are some of the key lessons that you've learned in your careers that you feel that you bring to the table? Could I start with Brad and then Scott, Carla, and Kristen?
Sure. I guess in the last 18 months here, I've been working to kind of step away from the doer side of this, of actually being, super engaged with going out and doing business development on projects myself, and stepping up more to a strategic level, because now we have, anywhere from 4 to 7 people at any given time that are that are kind of working various aspects of the business development process. And there was actually a question that came up from the audience that says, does anybody have business development personnel that solely focuses on a strategic level? And although I don't do that solely, that is where the majority of my time is spent. But it is taken a shift for me personally from an approach standpoint, because as we all know, it's a heck of a lot easier to run your own personal operating system as opposed to running a system that works for a variety of people and to get things done through other people, right? So that's been my biggest lesson learned is moving away from being a heavy hitter in the business development game to being more of an MVP and making what my mentor calls an MVP, and making those around me better at what we're trying to do.
Yeah, Brad, I'll echo that. As your role grows, your personal reward system has to also change with it. And if you're out just for the trophy hunt, that goes away as you get more strategic. You now need to turn into more of a guide role to help those around you in the trophy hunt. And I think another big one for me, just due to our growth over the 20 years, has really been that, challenging the organizational chart and every once in a while throwing it away and starting over, and engineering the organizational chart for a company delivering our revenue, what it should really look like, and getting support in place for people before you're overworking the people that you have, and to make sure that we're maintaining the culture we want to maintain, and we're not sacrificing our people's quality of life for a bottom line return. I think that is something that I've really challenged myself to stay in touch with and make sure I'm ahead of before I hear it in an exit interview, because we don't understand the requirements for the load that we're putting on someone.
This is Carla. Looking at some of the lessons learned and successes, I think our big thing is just really looking at when we focus on relationships and we focus on our win strategy, because we have a whole process for win strategy, that's when we're most successful. When we get busy and we get off that and we don't have all of our team members involved in targeting that project or that client, we're not as successful. So I know we're really always looking at how can we drive to be a value add partner and not just a commodity, not just a price. How can we work upstream and show clients, that we're different. We can help influence how they might be engineering the project, how they might be filing it under a new IECC code, any type of cost savings. We're thinking about the operational functions, maintenance of the building, kind of looking at how that owner is going to be owning this product for a long time, not just a construction project. So again, for us, we go back to really basics, but I feel like it's relationships win the job. And if you don't have a great relationship, you can lose the job that way, and really sticking to your win strategy. Do you have a win strategy? Ours is quite complex, and it involves a lot of different departments and different players within our organization. But when we follow it, it's amazing. It takes time, and when we get busy, sometimes we're challenged in really executing that full win strategy.
Kristen, did you have any other comments or?
Sorry, yeah. I think one of the things that, looking back, 2020 hindsight and successes, I think that a lot of companies, depending on size, some have CRM, some don't. But again, Wember is not the largest firm. We're 13 people, but the power of the CRM that we have implemented over the last couple of years, it's been imperative. We're getting it up to speed, and it's empowering all the seller doers to really gain knowledge of where the pipeline is at and where the current activities fall. So providing the intelligence to all of the different people involved. I'm the clearinghouse of all the information, so I have a lot of it in my head, but there's so many people who are touching on these different prospects and who have the established relationships in place and are generating work. And to have that in a central location, it can really empower your staff and make a big difference.
Very good. So we have just about 10 minutes remaining, and I'd like to squeeze in 2 questions from the audience. So one, if we could answer it from each one of the panel members pretty efficiently. There was a curiosity question on if your firms have business development personnel that are solely focused at the strategic level, or do all business development staff work on the front lines and sales pipeline? Scott?
I guess I'll take the quickest part of that one. In that you kind of stay. It is very helpful to have someone stay very strategic and out in front of everybody. If everybody's focused on their singular deal, it's difficult to see down the line a little bit.
I guess we don't have a dedicated strategic level, but we certainly try to keep 50 to 70% of his time strategic. So just as Brad said, he doesn't get lost in 5 deals or 10 deals, overly focused on one thing. He needs to be managing the bigger picture.
This is Carla. I would say we're a mix of what Scott and Brad shared, where we do have someone that's at a higher level, really looking at, are we following our strategic plan? Are we staying in the guardrails we've set up of client pursuits, of project pursuits? We're going to go outside that. There has to be a good reason, a good conversation for it. I do feel it's important to have somebody. Maybe they don't sit in that seat 100% of the time. They can still be billable and having different client relationships, but it's helpful because I think when you get on the line of pursuing projects, you get so focused on, those specific clients, you don't always see the big picture of what's going on at the whole company level.
This is Kristen. I think it's a shared responsibility. I mean, my position is definitely focused on trying to keep everyone in the strategic thought when we're vetting out go, no-go situations, or even just considering an emerging market. Our president also, he is dedicated from the operations side, and he has the higher bird's eye view of everything, BD plus operations. And then from there, it is a shared strategy. We meet regularly with the divisions and the thought leaders within the company on what we should be pursuing and what we're not, and making sure it's in line with the bigger strategic goals for 1 year all the way to 5 years.
Okay, before I close this up with your just final thought or piece of advice, I'm going to take one last question from the audience, which is just some explanation of structure organizationally. They're stating that often they see marketing professionals under the arm of operations rather than with marketing and business development managers. They're just wondering how you structure your marketing and business development teams from a management standpoint of your personnel, and any recommendations as to why. Starting with you, Carla.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in our we have get work, do work, perform work, and track work. And so in our get work group, we felt it important to have marketing, sales, pre-construction estimating, all together. So we're linked on common pursuits initiatives. We divide and conquer when an RFP comes in or some type of a competitive pricing exercise. And so we've created it so that we have multiple marketing people, multiple estimators, multiple pre-construction managers. And so we can divide bits and pieces of a project that comes in. It doesn't have to be, one heavy on just one team member, but we always pick one team member to be the lead for that RFP initiative.
Brad?
Yeah, so I guess where I'll take it, because we are set up to where, I manage. I'm not on the operations side. I manage the business development and marketing folks. But I can tell you that position kind of comes with the size of the company. Scott alluded to it a little bit earlier. Is as you're growing as a company, I think it makes sense for the org chart to kind of morph into that. If you're a smaller organization, very often that the marketing / BD, sometimes it's the same person, is going to be under the operation side. But I think what you need to be cognizant of is just understand the different kind of driving personality traits or energy that a particular person in a position like that needs, because what engaging and outgoing and kind of boisterous marketing or business development person needs from an interaction standpoint is far different and far different management style, frankly, than what an operations or a technical person needs. So for those smaller firms where they do fall under the operations side, just make sure you're playing to their personality traits a little bit and engaging them to where they can perform at a high level.
Tristan?
Yeah, we all are a 13-person firm, like I've said, so it's more of an intimate setting. I think that, for the most part, I'm a one-person show that has a lot of support from the whole team, but I work directly under the president.
Okay. And how about for you, Scott? What do you experience in your firm?
We have a vice president of business development that reports to me directly, so I think it is critical to have somebody understand the nature of business development. As I said earlier, operations, once a job's in the door, the production and the delivery of the numbers is a fairly linear understanding and relationship. Sales and marketing is not linear. You're not going to win the same average, you're not going to win the same volume every week. So I think it's different for an operational mind to grasp that and work through it.
Okay, very good. So we've talked a lot about goals, and one of my goals as your moderator was to make sure that we wrapped up on time. So with that, we have 1 minute for closing thoughts from each one of the panelists. Can we start with you, Brad?
Sure. Yeah, just a pleasure to be here. Hopefully some of the perspective was helpful. And I got to say, I really enjoyed hearing the other panelists speak. It's always great to get some insight as to how other companies are doing it. And clearly you guys are all pretty doggone successful at doing it. So thank you very much.
Kristen.
Yes, I too appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's such an important topic that can really lend itself to the success of the BD and marketing staff and the company as a whole. I do think the last point I'd like to drive home is making sure, again, that you're keeping track, the frontline people are keeping track of the hours it takes to accomplish certain activities, marketing activities that would support the strategic goals, so you can get really realistic and focused and do the best activities that are really going to produce the biggest return on investment for your target market.
Excellent. Carla?
Yes, thanks for sharing your time with us today on this remote webinar. I think when I think of business development, I hear the biggest challenges typically come up in conversation about not having enough data or tracking information or accountability, and people struggle sometimes in that role, and how do you show value to the company and really make all those connective pieces. I think we talked about ways to include business development in strategic planning, strategic plans, but my encouragement would be sharing those, whatever the goals, the numbers, having that dashboard so you or your team knows at any time, are you winning or are you down? Just kind of like a game, a sporting game. The more data you have and you know you're successful, you're on the mark, it should never be a question if you are. And again, having that data helps you and your team members be accountable.
And Scott, will you wrap us up?
Well, that's a lot of pressure. Well, one, thank you for having me on today. I appreciated listening to everyone today and the questions. And I think for me, the last thought, I think Brad kind of alluded to it, that we forget about understanding one another. And business development, and I'm an engineer by degree, so, a lot of things are black and white, or we can talk about it quick and make a decision. I would just ask people as they challenge leadership to not be dissuaded if they don't hear you the first time. You may not understand what's going on in the back of their head, and they may look for an easy answer. And don't lose your faith or your focus. Stay on them, challenge them. We'll hear you. It may just take more than one time. I guess for me, that's it. We've got a lot to learn from each other. So thank you again.
I tell you what, this is Joe again, and that's a great way. That is great practical advice. Because it's so easy to take one message thinking that it's final, but that communication is just one point in time. So, but everybody's advice was great. So yes, Danielle, if there's anything else that you would like to kind of wrap up, I just want to say thank you and to the panelists. It was a really amazing discussion here. We're going to be sending out a survey, so we'd love to get your feedback on it. We do read every word, so we really take those seriously. And that will also include a link, because we are recording the call, and that will also take you to a link so you can listen into the call again. One quick thing too, a number of you asked if you could have a copy of the slides. So please send in your email if you'd like a copy of the slides. We will get that to you. And if there are any other questions, I know we weren't able to get to all of them, but if there are any other questions, I can see if I can flag some of those questions down and also respond to you as well. We will be having another meeting. The Denver chapter will be hosting another one. We hold these meetings bi-monthly, so look for the next date and topic in June. Fingers crossed we can meet live, but we'll have to see. And in Phoenix, we're going to have one meeting in the end of May, and actually in Southern California has a virtual webinar on April 28th, so that'll be posted as well. But with that, I just want to say thank you. Danielle, is there anything else?
No, I am really looking forward to one of the things I think we enjoy the most as business development people, which is nothing replaces the face-to-face. So I'm looking forward to the next meeting where we do this in person again. I think that the membership in Denver has just been so impressive to, in 2 months, get as many members as we already have on board. And I just encourage you to get connected. Kimberly is running with the steering committee and taking new ideas for topics that you'd like in the future.
Hear, hear. So thank you again, Danielle. Thanks you, Kimberly, and thank you to the panel and everybody else, and for you attending. And look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks, everybody.